The Soros leader turned to face him. Mark saw his own form reflected in the helmet's opaque visor. Words came clear in Mark's mind. "You are very near this truth that you seek. Mark Daniels. Do you want our help?" Mark glanced behind the Soros. The door was there. He had to go through it. Without moving a muscle, he stretched out his thought and made it open. "Ah, very strong. But are you ready to see what is Bayo? Never mind the melodrama," said Mark out loud. He started confidently towards the doorway. Deep within the spaceship, a low vibration was suddenly only just perceptible. Mark was at the doorway when he became aware of it. Striped arm was beside him and the gloved hand closed around Mark's upper arm. "I will show you. We will go together." Mark shrugged off the guiding hand and began to walk straight towards the room he had seen in his dream. "I warn you," said the Soros in Mark's mind. "You must be ready to face what you are about to discover." "I am ready." The vibration grew slightly in intensity. He opened the door and stepped inside. "No, you are not." Suddenly strong hands seized and pinned his arms from behind. He had no time to react. Simultaneously he felt cold sharp pressure on the back of his neck and the prick of a many-pointed syringe. His neck went cold. Mark felt his legs fall from under him and the same strong arms bear him up. Then he lost consciousness. As they were driving away from McIntyre's field, to report to the field command center and explain themselves, Jeanette began to scream. For the past few moments she had been aware of a low humming vibration emanating from the spaceship. Now Robert skewed the car to a halt and the engine stalled. Out of the corner of her eye, she had seen movement, then turned. What she then saw, on the other side of the perimeter fence, was the Soros ship effortlessly starting to rise, slowly at first, then with greater velocity. They all got out of the car and ran to the fence. Jeanette rattled it furiously and impotently. The ship's legs were disappearing into its body. She was still screaming no when the ship, moments later, moved smoothly and soundlessly into the sky and vanished entirely from sight. Carrie fell to her knees in the damp grass and her anguish found expression in long, desperate wail. An army Land Rover approached down the narrow road. It stopped before the car, blocking its path. Another vehicle came up behind. 4 burly soldiers, armed with rifles, got out. They surrounded the car, rifle barrels trained on Jeanette and Carrie. Roberts began to reach inside his jacket for his ID, but a warning wave from a rifle muzzle brought his movement to an abrupt halt. He raised his hands above his head. 27 Cheyenne Mountain. It was 2:15 a.m. when the U.S. Defense Control Command facility was thrown into uproar. Locke came growling from his sleeping quarters in the annex adjoining his offices and began barking to subordinates to tell him what the hell was going on. Jack Bruce was not due to come on duty until later that morning, but Sam Webster had come back on 3 hours previously and it was to him that the general finally came for answers. "This had better be a goddamn nuclear attack, boy," declared Locke, "or I'll have your ass on a bed of side salad for this goddamn hullabaloo. Shut off the alarms for Christ's sakes, shut them off." Someone pressed the mute button and the wailing alarms suddenly dropped in volume but continued to sound less insistently in the background. Throughout the room screens were flicking off and on insanely and perplexed analysts and operators were throwing up their hands and turning to each other in baffled, frustrated confusion. On the wall was mounted a huge plasma display screen showing the world in detail. A red light was flashing over Scotland, and another winked on and off over Baffin Bay in Canada. Yellow lights converged very slowly on both. Webster said, "First off, sir, this UFO appeared over the magnetic pole in northern Canada. The Nunavut territory up there is bristling with radar installations left over from the Cold War and some of them are still functioning. We have no visual confirmation as to what it is yet, because the magnetic field up there is going haywire and disrupting everything, but it seems to be that 1 second there was nothing but sky and the next there was an alien ship the size of Manhattan. It is enormous, sir. There is a strike force in the area and a squadron of Eagles is making good time to its location, so we should eyeball it in a few minutes. My hunch is it's the Soros ship we suspected was there all along, the one that's been sending those electromagnetic signals to interfere with the Nordic. What is this other blip?" asked the general, nodding towards the screen. Is it what I think it is? It's the Soros ship in Scotland, sir. It's airborne or it wouldn't be appearing on the screen. Affirmative, sir. We have audio confirmation that the Soros ship began to lift off 2 minutes ago. They on the move, satellite surveillance. Have we got the Nordics online, any of them? Negative, sir. Telemetry has been totally disrupted. The goddamn satellites are acting like they've got minds of their own. Scramble all aircraft. Get the president onto Air Force One right away. And patch me through to him right now. I want the codes for DEFCON 1. Webster gulped and was aware his hands were shaking. That's nuclear attack status. Do you think, just do it, boy. Then notify Talbot in Scotland of our change in alert status and patch me through to him too. Come on, shake your ass. Webster hastened to activate the comm links. It took only seconds to put Locke into contact with the president, who was already being rushed in his limousine to the nearest airport where Air Force One could pick him up. In the meantime, Locke watched the viewscreen with mounting amazement. The red blip over Scotland suddenly moved with incredible speed away from the yellow lights. They represented RAF jets, leaving them far behind. The larger blip over Canada also increased velocity and headed out over the Atlantic. The blips converged above a point to the south of Iceland, and two became one. That one proceeded to move with gathering speed up over the Arctic Ocean and then vanished. President online, sir, said Webster. General Locke picked up the phone. What the hell's happening? President Luis de la Frontera was enjoying his second term in office and had presided over what was sure to go down as one of the most significant eras in human history, yet he could not disguise the apprehension in his voice. Mr. President, Locke began. I have to report that the Soros have gone, Sam Webster called out. I've got the NASA tracking system online, sir. The ship's left Earth orbit. I am sorry. Mr. President, things are happening quickly here. Hold on, sir. Webby punched it up on screen. What appeared was a computer-generated image produced by Earth-bound radar stations and those satellites still functioning. The screen showed the Earth as a circle and the Moon over eastern Russia. The red light of the Soros ship was moving at a speed no Earth craft could have matched. In less than a minute it had crossed the orbit of the Moon. 400.000 kilometers away, and then the tracking devices could no longer keep up and it vanished again. Mr. President, they've gone. What on earth are you talking about? How can they be gone? I don't know, sir. Replied the general. I just do not know. Again Webster interrupted. General Talbot on Sec Line 1. Sir, excuse me again. Mr. President, Locke picked up the secure link to Allied Command HQ in Stirling. He listened for a few moments without speaking. Sam Webster thought the general's face lost even more of its color. I see. Locke said finally. Thank you, Andrew. To de la Frontera, who was still being hastened towards Air Force One, he said. The Soros have indeed gone, it seems. And that 15-year-old boy we thought they were trying to kill, they've taken him with them. 28. The Soros number 2. Coming aware again. Mark knew he was not awake. He could not see in the normal sense of the word, but he could perceive things, sense them and know them. He knew above all he was now a prisoner. His body lay on a kind of trolley. 3 of the Soros were gathered round him, still wearing spacesuits. He understood their words. Let us do it now, said one. Take what we need. The tone was harsh. Impatient, angry. No, said another. This was Striped Arm. It pleases me to wait a little. We have time. Mark realized that electrodes and wires led from various parts of his body to a selection of monitors, similar to what he had seen in hospitals or on hospital programs, but the external designs were noticeably different. Their surfaces looked crusty, rather than smoothly metallic. His alpha monitor suggests he is now conscious of us. I want to talk to him. Why? Why talk? Enough of talk. Enough of your games. We must do it now. Take what we need now. The third Soros, silent until now, said. We have had our fun, fooling the humans. But now there can be little time despite what you think. The others are coming. What is to be gained by prolonging this further? The second Soros replied. For me, the final triumph, the greatest satisfaction, comes in the human knowing, finally and helplessly, what this has all been about. I want him to know that, just as he was approaching his greatest power, we took that from him. Just as we approached our greatest power, their ancestors took it from us. I want the whole race to know that. I want them all to know. The game must end here. The Soros's voice had been rising in vehemence and he banged the trolley forcefully to emphasize his point. This Soros approached Mark, who felt utterly powerless. Little human boy, it hissed at him. Did you think you could outwit us? Us. We have played you, like reeling in a flapping fish. Our satellites watched almost every step of your so-called escape in your primitive vehicles. You have been blindly following our plans all along. I want to talk to him, repeated Striped Arm, in a gentler tone. There was no emotion in his voice, but there was an authority in it that made the others acquiesce. The two Soros withdrew, albeit with reluctance. From a small tray at the head of the trolley. Striped Arm took a small needle. He injected it straight into Mark's carotid artery. Wakefulness did not return with the drug. Mark had no control over his limbs, but he felt he could now control his face and mouth. He could speak. You can speak and you can follow me with your perceptive mind. Said Striped Arm, if I show you something you can see it, if I think of something you can see it. Is this not so? Answer, yes, listen to me. Mark Daniels, and listen well. I am going to tell you what you are. I am going to show you things the like of which you have never seen. What followed was like a drug-induced hallucination, or a series of mirages, bizarre in content and form. The communication with the Soros was entirely telepathic. Colors were enhanced, shapes rendered strangely distorted and alien, like the machines surrounding his trolley. Mark could see a map. It was a map following the same principles as a human map, showing a planet, but divided up into orange-like segments to give a more accurate perspective on the land-sea ratio, similar to the Mercator projections Mark had seen in atlases in geography lessons. Most of this world was sea. On one side, however, was a huge, solid-looking land mass, while on the other was a collection of what seemed to be pieces of land, loosely joined together. One piece, vaguely triangular in shape, was detached from the rest, a brown and green patch in its setting of blue. There were large water features within the larger collection of land chunks. And when Mark looked closely at the land formations in this loose conglomeration, he saw shapes that he recognized. Yes, indeed, said the Soros. This is our map room, you see, and also our museum. Our little joke. We do love our little jokes and games. We termed our ship a museum, and indeed, the maps you see around you, on the walls and on the tables, are millions of years old. Some of these maps are maps of planets which have, as I speak, ceased to exist. Some of these planets were home to great civilizations, oh yes, very great indeed. Insects, mammals, reptiles, birds, somewhere amongst the infinity of all those stars, all life forms, including a great many not found on Earth, find the upper hand sooner or later. But nowhere did we find any civilization so advanced as ours, or one which even approached our brilliance. And here is a paradox for you. Mark, this spaceship is only 300 years old. Mark saw the Soros ship flying smoothly through dark spaces between stars. And yet it is also 65 million years old. A paradox, a riddle. Can you riddle me that? I wonder. Yes, said Michael, I can. You came from Earth, you are indeed intelligent, said the Soros, and we are the last survivors of the high culture that flourished on this planet nearly 70 million years ago. If you could have seen what we really look like beneath our suits, you humans would have labeled us dinosaurs, and in your supreme ignorant arrogance you would have regarded us as your inferiors. Simply because we do not look like you. Such is human nature. Soros. Our idea of a pun. Of course none of you realized it. No SARS. Take the last syllable. Trace it back in your etymology and you will find its meaning. You would call us lizards, reptiles, and you would wrinkle up your smooth faces in disgust as you said those words, for we are the creatures most humans fear more than any other. Ah, I see our ship's environment is re-established now, so I can show you my true form. Mark looked on as Striped Arm removed first his helmet, which was effected by detaching certain tubes and plugs and lifting it off, and then the body suit, which was removed in the same way a human would. The Soros stood before him. The head was larger than a human head, the features flatter, the eyes much larger and hooded with scaly skin. Thick bony ridges surrounded eyes and nose. There was no hair. Thick cords of muscle held up the head, for the Soros was a biped. The arms were similar to human arms, only much more muscled and stronger, and the body was sheathed in a thick, scaly armor that would take the skin off human knuckles. The groin area was smooth, the genitalia being held inside the body until the season for use. The legs were well muscled and the knees hinged in the opposite direction from that of humans, which made the Soros look like someone had given the top half a savage twist of 180 degrees so he was facing backwards. There were 3 toes. The hands, however, had 3 fingers and an opposing thumb, a feature which anthropologists and biologists had correctly deduced was necessary for the development of tool handling capability in any species. Behind, there was only the vestige of a tail, for like humans that appendage was no longer needed for balance and so had all but disappeared. The creature continued. "We are the original civilized beings from planet Earth. Look at our map. And this point here was our first homeland. It has long since vanished under the surface of the planet, by the constant moving of the planet's tectonic plates. That is an area you would call the Pacific Ocean. And here is my home. Do you recognize this area?" Mark looked. "It's Scotland," he thought, or what Scotland was millions of years ago. "That is why they are here, in this place rather than another." "Yes. But now you will find no more trace of the beautiful cities we built or the wonders we created in our time on Earth. Believe me, we have looked. Our high culture, 10 million years in the making, which resulted in our ability to fly to the stars, is as if it had never existed. As our land has vanished, so yours has come to the fore. That triangular shape is what you now call India." He pointed to the map, and, a few million years after the making of this map, it collided with Asia and formed the Himalayas. This, as you correctly perceive, is Scotland, and the mountains here were the oldest in the world, higher than the Himalayas are now. Yet, like our culture, and our cities, and the people we left behind, even these mountains will be ground down by time and fade away, and all that will remain of them is what you now call the Scottish Highlands. That little sea it was only about 500 kilometers across at one time is what you call the Atlantic. That small patch of water, no more than a pond really, will become the Mediterranean Sea. Pangaea, said Mark. A name recalled from a program on the Discovery Channel. The name for the original supercontinent. That was the map I drew from my dream, yes. Pangaea is your name for it. This was our world. Now gone. Try to imagine what we feel. Can you imagine that? No, you cannot possibly. Ah, but then, you know what it is like to lose a home. We made sure of that. Michael. Not quite the same thing, but now we can talk on a very slightly more equal footing. You feel sorrow and there is another of our little jokes. We feel sorrows, the Soros. But our sorrows are deeper and sharper than you can possibly imagine. Mark saw the image of a small creature being tended by a mother. They were Soros, yet the affection between them was obvious even to his human perceptions. This domestic scene, some kind of recording perhaps, or a memory given 3D representation, was in a room high up, very high up in some enormous towering building, for behind, through a narrow open window in a thick stone wall, Mark could see out over a magnificent landscape. Behind the mother and baby was evidence of a mighty civilization capable of magnificent creations, a mountainous landscape filled and crowned with wonders indeed. Then Mark appeared to be flying through this ancient landscape, so different from the one he knew. He could even feel the moist coolness of white clouds on his goose-fleshed arms as he flew between shining towers. Kilometers high, and gleaming citadels, fertile valleys, soaring peaks. He crossed, hundreds of feet up, a vast plateau parkland. Gigantic beasts roamed in herds. Our cattle, explained the Soros. Your textbooks speak of these lumbering beasts as rulers of the planet, but it was not so. They were our cattle. And the creatures you call Tyrannosaurus rex, the Soros voice seemed to convey amusement, we kept them for our sport. No, they did not rule, we ruled. We ruled. And the evolutionary branch from which humans developed. The mammals, your ancestors, in our time were no more than little mice, shrews, smaller than your fist. Our children used to keep them as pets and train them to stand on 2 legs. What happened? Mark wondered. 10 million years of evolution, replied the Soros, were wiped out in an instant. We had conquered all the ills that plague you now: hunger, disease, old age, and we had mastered our genetic code, something your race has still not been able to do fully. There is much you can learn from us. Our lifetimes extend to many thousands of your years. We on this spaceship have been traveling for 300 years. But because we have spent much of that time at speeds very close to the speed of light, time slowed down for us. 300 years for us meant millions of years passed on Earth. We knew that would happen. We were willing for that to happen. Your own scientists have figured out as much. But what we did not imagine was that when we returned our entire civilization would be gone. Gone. The Soros grief was unmistakable. Your textbooks have the reason. It was a comet, hitting the Earth in the equatorial region, in the area of what you call the Gulf of Mexico. But we calculate there were other impacts all over the planet, only these are not evident now. How the collapse of our species happened we do not know. Like you, we had developed powerful weapons and the world was well defended, against just such an eventuality. Perhaps they could not be deployed in time. We just don't know. We, on this ship, must have left just weeks before the comet struck. So we, on this ship, represent the crowning achievement of our evolution because we are the last remnant of it. Only one other ship capable of interstellar flight had been built. Only two. We launched at the same time, on the same mission. Kind of like Noah's Ark, thought Mark. But only one ship has returned, continued Striped Arm. We left our planet to take part in a journey of discovery. As I have indicated, our understanding of the physical laws of the universe had led at last to a means of reaching speeds very close to the speed of light. We have indeed traveled right round the galaxy in less than one of our lifetimes, while those we loved, our lovers and our children, became dust blown over a dead land in the wind of centuries. So when we said we came from the other side of the galaxy, we were not lying. In a manner of speaking, my left hand is on one side of the galaxy and my right hand is on the other. Again Mark clearly detected amusement in the tone, another trick, another play on words. But in that journey round the galaxy, we discovered something. Now Mark felt darkness envelop him. He was on the bridge of the Soros spaceship, staring at a view screen that was dark except for a few pinpricks of light. He saw what they had seen at the moment of their discovery. What you are seeing now are the stars on the outermost edge of our galaxy, explained the Soros. The furthest fold of the spiral arm. It was here we found. The Soros could not translate the words. The monsters. The old ones. The dark gods. The enemy. The Soros could find no real words in human vocabulary to describe exactly what they had found in these furthest reaches. But Mark knew with absolute clarity that what they found made them deeply afraid. We dropped out of light speed in a dark solar system. Its sun was collapsing and was on the verge of extinction. It had 6 planets in close orbit around it, and as its gravitational pull intensified, the planets would be drawn into their destruction in 200 to 300 years. The Soros, as you will have realized by now, have a telepathic link with each other. This link, which had enabled us to achieve so much, was finally to prove our curse. We needed supplies of uranium and some other minerals to replenish our power sources, so we spent some time scanning the planets for signs of it. My ship located some on the 4th planet and our second ship explored the 3rd, a dark, desert, lifeless world, forbidding in every aspect. The second ship had no sooner touched down than the crew was assailed by the most horrible fears and visions. Realizing that some force, or forces in the planet itself, were the cause, they tried to take off, but the ground beneath the ship had somehow bonded with the hull, as if the planet's soil had formed claws and seized the ship's legs in the tightest of grips. This bond had happened even at the subatomic level. That was why our anti-gravity propulsion had no effect, and the ship was trapped. In our minds we had no choice but to witness all the horrors the crew suffered. Creatures came. Life forms unlike anything ever imagined. They were not carbon-based, like Soros or human, they had nothing in common with animals or insects or anything that we would describe as life. They moved through matter like we move through air. Solid, liquid, gas, it made no difference to them. They seemed to move into matter at times, and inhabit it, changing it to suit themselves. They moved in the spaces between the atoms, the subatomic, scarcely comprehensible dimension. Using the energy that makes our telepathy possible, they could enter an individual's mind and, with a gentle torturing caress, throw the brain's electrical activity into havoc. They could change molecular densities, atomic weights, and alter cell structures. We became for them like a human child's plasticine toy. There was no escape. They lurked in shadows, waiting. I cannot explain how it was to watch our companions not die. For these beings did not kill. Not at first. They absorbed, they entered and controlled, and they changed the shapes of our companions into whatever whims they had. By altering cell structures, they grew hideous organs and limbs, and our companions became abominations. But within those abominations our friends were helplessly alive still. Briefly Mark glimpsed something of the horror the Soros experienced at telepathically witnessing the fate of those on board the second ship. These beings had not known what space travel was. We gave them the concept and the key, when they took our friends and the second ship. Our weapons were useless against them. They move through matter, but are not of it, and our weapons, of course, depend on physical laws, just as yours do. The second ship took off. We saw it. But we knew none of our friends was in control. We were so frightened we, who had hunted Tyrannosaurus for sport, lost our reason with fear. I mean that. We went mad in our terror, and we fled. The galaxy, Mark Daniels, is not well populated with intelligent life. There are many life forms, but not many are not what we could call intelligent. Life is so diverse. But we can no more communicate with the fish, or insect life here on Earth than we can with some of the beings we found. Can you imagine trying to explain your culture to a bluebottle or a midge? The idea is absurd. And although, using machines or telepathy, we can carry on a conversation with humans, we cannot share the truth of what we have experienced, what we feel and what we know. Not really. If an army of ants is coming towards you, are you going to try to establish communication with them? Of course not. It is simply impossible. You destroy them or you run away. So we ran from the enemy. They are not animals, you see. And so they have not evolved as animals have, with senses and feelings and instincts. They are completely beyond our comprehension, it's as simple as that. But there was nowhere we could run to get help. We had found no one else in the galaxy so advanced as we were. So we came home, thinking that our civilization would still be intact, and that somehow some means could be found to defeat these monsters. We arrived back just over 100 years ago. We sent down a little probe, first, because it was obvious things had changed drastically. But in our eagerness to return, perhaps we failed to program the probe correctly. It created something of a bang in the atmosphere. Somewhere above the land you call Russia. A spark of all but forgotten lore fired in Mark's mind. You humans have been speculating about it ever since. But, in any event, it soon became apparent that the continents had shifted, some of the planet's resources had been renewed with the movement of the tectonic plates, the atmosphere had subtly changed, and the life forms were not what we expected, not at all. Of our species there was no sign, and a new species, descended from that little group of mammals I spoke of earlier, had evolved to fill the gap: humans, Homo sapiens. I've mentioned that some of our children had kept mammals for pets. It was quite common. Our children used to make the small shrews of that era do tricks they could roll over, beg for food, and some of us liked to make them stand on two legs, as I have said. Understand, then, how we felt when we found our home overrun by pets. Imagine you come home one day and find your family dog standing on two legs, wearing clothes and issuing orders. At first it was easy to hide from you. We could land in unexplored parts of the world and carry out our researches to find out what had happened, and at the same time we could study the human race. But such things take time. Time was not something we had a lot of. The enemy, you see, had been able to use the Soros telepathic link to trace us. They were following us through space, in the second ship, using the telepathic structures in our friends' brains. They are coming. We can feel them even now, like a mad chaos arising over a distant horizon. But they are not far away, and our time is running out. We studied human beings. Your minds and your brains were of particular interest to us. All life on Earth is ultimately derived from the same sources. Earth DNA is unlike any other. So we are linked, you and I, Mark Daniels. Separated as a species, and 70 million years apart. Yet we are linked. A strange thought for you, no doubt. But your brains, you have at the base what your own scientists call the reptilian brain, then, wrapping around that, in a sense, is the mammalian brain, and finally, the thing that gives you your intelligence, your human qualities, is the cortex, the human part of you that has only evolved in the last few million years. And it is unlike anything else in the universe. It is completely unique, and can never evolve again anywhere else. It means that you can accomplish certain things we cannot. Despite our telepathic ability, and our immense intelligence, we are not quite your equals in imagination. You can visualize certain things that we cannot, and you can perceive certain things that we cannot. Some of you can foretell the future, some of you can move objects by willpower alone, and some, such as your greatest philosophers and scientists,